Hey there, I'm glad you're here watching this. And if you decide to hit that subscribe button, you'll make my day. No exaggeration. Now, let's get into it. There's a peculiar kind of silence that settles after you're blindsided. It's not calm, it's electric. You feel it under your skin, taste it in the air, hear it humming in the walls. That's the sound in my head the moment I asked Grace, my fiancée, about the unfamiliar man hovering just behind her. She was lounging beside a turquoise pool in Tulum, draped in a white robe that kept sliding off one shoulder, enormous sunglasses concealing most of her face. They weren't the playful kind. They looked like a disguise. Over her shoulder, a shirtless man laughed in a way that synced too easily with her own voice. I only caught his faint outline reflected in her aviators, but that tiny glimpse was enough to spike my pulse. "Who's that?" I asked, my voice level. The phone balanced in my hand while my words struggled through the patchy Wi-Fi in my apartment. Grace didn't so much as blink. Instead, she rolled her eyes like I'd asked whether the sky was blue. "Noah, please, that's Ezra, he's gay." "You said you were with your girlfriends," I reminded her, my fingers tightening around the phone. "And I am," she shot back, sharper now. "Ezra's part of the group. You're being ridiculous." That word, ridiculous, hit me harder than I expected, hotter than the Colorado sun streaming through my Denver windows. Barefoot on the cold kitchen tile in yesterday's hoodie, I felt her dismiss me as if I were a pushy stranger, not the man she'd vowed to marry in 6 weeks. "You've been gone 4 days," I said, my voice low. "You barely check in. And when you do, you're with some guy I've never met." She looked away from the camera, smiling at someone out of view. It was a real smile, unguarded, lit from within. When her eyes found me again, she dropped 5 words that cut cleaner than any accusation. "You need to relax, it's just a trip." No softness, no apology, just that casual dismissal. The call ended before I even realized my thumb had tapped the screen. The kitchen dimmed around me, the fridge's hum filling the space she'd left. My phone buzzed, not Grace, just a reminder for our wedding registry appointment next Tuesday. The irony nearly made me laugh. Instead, I walked to the window and stared down at the empty street. And it landed on me, heavier than her tone, heavier than her denial. I didn't really know the woman I was about to marry. Let me back up. I'm Noah Hensley, 32, born in Boulder, now living in Denver, working as a marketing analyst. I'm the sort who arranges coffee mugs by height, double-checks the locks before bed, sends handwritten thank you cards. My routines aren't just quirks, they're my stability. Grace used to tease me for it, calling me Old Man Noah when I turned the lights off at exactly 11:02 p.m. I thought she found it charming. Maybe it just bored her. Looking back, I'd overlooked too much. The short replies, the spur-of-the-moment trips, the way she sidestepped wedding plans. I told myself it was pre-wedding nerves. But staring down at the tile, I finally recognized the truth. I wasn't imagining things. I was watching my engagement unravel thread by thread, that gut-deep knot that says you're being played. I felt it. And for the first time since meeting her, I didn't try to talk myself out of it. And that call? That wasn't the low point. That was just the warm-up. The next afternoon, I was sunk into my cousin Travis's couch, absently scrolling his TV menu without really seeing it. My brain kept replaying Grace, robe, sunglasses, that flippant, "You need to relax." Travis sat next to me, chomping cereal loud enough to rattle the blinds. His apartment smelled faintly of peanut butter and old gym socks, but somehow I felt steadier there than in my own place since Grace had left. "She was by the pool giggling while you were talking about the wedding seating chart?" he asked through a mouthful. I gave a short nod. "Damn." "She said the guy was gay," I muttered. Travis raised an eyebrow. "Uh-huh, and I'm a Navy SEAL." He set his bowl aside, grabbed the remote from me, and opened YouTube. "Stop running the scene in your head. She's not worth the spiral. You want answers? Go get them." "How?" A smirk. "Buy a ticket. Show up in Tulum. Pull the big romantic drama move. Call her bluff." It sounded so unlike me, reckless, unscripted, but betrayal rearranges your wiring. You're serious? As a heart attack, worst case, she's telling the truth. Best case, you catch her red-handed and skip a lifetime of mind games. That phrase, mind games, stuck. Had she been twisting my perception all along? When someone shrinks you with a smile, calls your instincts irrational, makes you question your own footing, maybe that's not paranoia. Maybe it's survival. That night, I sat at my desk, laptop glowing, fingers frozen over the keyboard. I typed, "Flights to Tulum." Numbers flickered on the screen. I sorted by earliest departure, my heart thudding. My palms were damp, my throat dry. I hadn't even packed, but the ground already felt like it was shifting beneath me. I booked Villa Arrecife Azul, the same resort we'd chosen for our honeymoon. Just seeing the name turned my stomach. I reserved the room under Daniel Hart. Why? I'm not sure. Maybe it gave me an edge. Maybe it let me pretend I wasn't walking straight into a storm. The confirmation email hit my inbox like pure adrenaline. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was hunting the truth. By sunrise, I'd packed light. 2 linen shirts, 1 pair of slacks, my passport, and a small notebook. I told no one except Travis, leaving a note on my fridge. Work trip. Back Monday. Stepping into the airport, I felt it. Something sharp, steady. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even angry. I was focused, determined, like a man with nothing left to lose. When I arrived at the resort, the woman at the desk smiled warmly as she slid over my keycard, unaware of the storm brewing in my chest. In the elevator, the air smelled faintly of salt water and eucalyptus. The room could have been in a magazine, sheets white enough to blind, a balcony framing a slim horizon of ocean, and a sweating welcome drink poised on a glass-topped table. But my gaze went only to the bed, the one Grace and I were meant to share after the vows. I stood there, unwilling to move, cataloging the perfection I hadn't yet disturbed. A long breath anchored me. I dropped my bag on the mattress and murmured into the stillness, "All right, let's begin." Beyond the sliding doors, the sun bled into the sea, ribbons of gold and deep red staining the waves. This wasn't the moment of reckoning. Not yet. This was just the opening note. I barely slept that night, not because of dread, but because my mind hummed with the sense that I was stepping into something irreversible. By the time dawn spread its first light across the water, I was already dressed, loose white shirt, dark sunglasses, and a confidence that felt borrowed. I could have passed for any tourist wandering the resort lobby, except my pulse was miles from leisure. I circled the property twice, committing every turn and corner to memory. Pools tiled in sapphire caught the morning sun, stone pathways wound through palm-shaded courtyards, and sun-flushed couples ambled in floppy hats. Staff members moved with choreographed precision, wheeling carts stocked with polished bottles. Close to noon, I claimed a chair at the far edge of the infinity pool, beneath the slanting shade of a palm. My phone sat in my hand, my patience unshaken. And then, she stepped into view. Grace emerged from the spa corridor, barefoot, hair in loose waves, laughter bright and unrestrained. A resort robe draped her shoulders, identical to the one worn by the man at her side. He wasn't Ezra, unless Ezra had abandoned loud swim trunks for a sculpted frame and a watch worth a year's rent. She cradled a drink crowned with a fresh flower. He bent toward her, murmured something, and she tilted her head back, exactly the way she did when soaking in someone's attention. Her fingers brushed his wrist with practiced ease. I didn't twitch, didn't speak. My breathing stayed even. I lifted my phone, recording, not their faces, but the pool glittering in pink and amber light. And beneath that picture-perfect frame, her laugh and their glasses clinking, threaded through like the quiet harmony of betrayal. The footage wasn't for proof to anyone else. It was for me, so I'd never rewrite this moment in gentler terms. So I couldn't pretend later that I'd been mistaken. They took loungers 2 seats away. She didn't see me. Her oblivion felt like a seal pressed onto the truth I'd been dodging. I rose without a sound and walked away. Back in my room, the sheets were still unwrinkled. The air still carried the faint scent of eucalyptus and something sharper. I lay down, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling as the scene replayed in my mind. I wasn't seething. I was lucid. That clarity felt like a blade, clean and almost beautiful. I knew then I'd never marry her. She didn't know yet. Grace not noticing me wasn't surprising. When she was in the center of the light, the rest of the world went dim. She likely assumed I was still in Denver, pacing around an empty venue, wondering why her replies had stopped. But I was here, watching her live the future we had planned, only with someone else, in the very place we were supposed to celebrate it. That evening, I didn't shadow her path or loiter outside their room. No dramatics. I simply walked. At the resort's far edge, balanced above jagged cliffs where waves pounded hard enough to swallow thought, a small bar glowed faintly in the dark. I took a stool, ordered a whiskey neat, and stared into the black water. The bartender, his skin weathered from years of sun, moved without hurry. He didn't ask questions. After my second drink, he finally spoke. "You here for the wedding?" I almost choked. "No," I said after a pause. "Guess I'm here instead of one." He gave a knowing nod as if the rest didn't need saying. The quiet settled again. I unlocked my phone and opened a blank note. Without thinking, I began typing the toast I'd once imagined giving at our rehearsal dinner. But it came out different. To the woman I thought I knew. You wore white long before I saw you in a dress. You made promises before I ever offered a ring. You carried my heart before you broke it. And still, this isn't about revenge. It's about holding on to myself when no one's watching, and walking away before I forget who that is. I didn't save it. I didn't erase it. It stayed there, unread, unaddressed. The bartender refilled my glass without asking. "Looks like you've made up your mind," he said. "I have," I replied, almost smiling. He moved on. I stayed until the bar emptied, couples slipping away, some laughing, some unsteady. None of them carried what I did. But I wasn't falling apart. For the first time since she'd accepted the ring, I felt steady. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I'd stopped making excuses for the distance, stopped justifying her contempt. This wasn't her mistake. It was her choice. And now, I'd made mine. I paid, stood, and let the wind off the ocean cut into me, daring me to finally let go. "You all right, friend?" the bartender called without looking up. I hesitated in the doorway. "I will be," I said. Checkout should have been routine. Hand over the key, sign the receipt, exchange polite thanks. But truth has a way of changing the air before you walk away from it. Halfway through signing, I felt it, that subtle shift, like the pressure before a storm. I looked up. Across the deck, Grace stood in a red sundress I didn't recognize, damp hair clinging to her shoulders like a tide reluctant to pull back. Her lips parted. For a moment, she seemed almost spectral. Then she moved, quick, deliberate. Sandals struck the stone as she closed the distance, her eyes locked on mine with predatory precision. "You followed me?" she hissed, low enough to keep the others from hearing, yet sharp enough to cut. "You spying on me now?" I slid the pen to the clerk. "You can email the receipt," I said. Then I turned toward her. We were inches apart. Her perfume, jasmine with something darker beneath, reached me before her stare did. Her lips parted, the start of another accusation hanging in the air, but I spoke first, cutting through whatever she was about to unleash. "Happy honeymoon," I said, my tone even, deliberate. That stopped her for the briefest moment, long enough for the weight of my words to register. She knew exactly what I was implying. This resort, this exact building, the dates, the amenities, all reserved in our names months ago. It was supposed to be our honeymoon, and here she was, living it out, with someone else. Across from me, Grace's hands curled into fists, shoulders lifting slightly as if bracing for a blow that wasn't coming. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she muttered. I let the words drift between us, heavy but unanswered. "You're making this into something it's not," she tried again, defensiveness bleeding into her voice. I tilted my head. "So he's not staying in the suite we chose? And that isn't the robe I gave you?" Her lips pressed into a sharp, unyielding line. "Oh, so now you're some kind of tragic hero? Flying down here like some heartbroken sleuth?" "No," I replied quietly. "I think I've finally stopped lying to myself." She gave a brittle, humorless laugh. "You're absurd. I just needed some space." "No," I said gently but firmly. "You needed someone else." That hit harder than anything else I could have said. She opened her mouth again, searching for something to throw back, but nothing came. Then I noticed movement. It was him, the man I'd seen lounging at the pool yesterday, walking toward us in swim trunks, his brow furrowed as if he'd stumbled into a scene from a book he hadn't read. Grace spun toward him abruptly, her posture locking tight. That's when I realized she hadn't told him the truth. He slowed as he reached us, looking between us with cautious curiosity. "Everything all right here?" I met his gaze directly. "Do you know she's engaged?" I asked, voice steady. He froze. Grace's head snapped toward me, her voice sharpening. "Noah, don't—" But truth doesn't shrink when you whisper at it. It only grows louder. His expression shifted, just barely, brows knitting, mouth parting before pressing shut again, as though trying to undo what he'd just heard. "Engaged?" he repeated, scanning our faces like we were strangers acting out a play. "Don't listen to him." Grace rushed out, brittle and tight. "He's just trying to stir things up." I didn't even look at her. "Did she tell you she was single?" I asked him. The pause before he answered told me enough. Then he pulled out his phone, which told me even more. A few swipes later, he turned the screen toward me. I didn't react. Dozens of messages, a trail of emojis, grainy photos of wine glasses, and at the top, her name saved as Maya. Maya. Something clenched in my chest. Not heartbreak, just pure disgust. Grace, Maya, snatched the phone away before I could read further. "This is vile," she spat, eyes burning. "You don't get to destroy this just because you're hurt." I studied her. This wasn't the woman I'd loved. This was someone else entirely, someone pieced together from excuses and self-interest, draped in enough charm to blind me to the warning signs until I was drowning in them. The man turned to her now, voice softer. "Is it true?" She hesitated, then pivoted toward me as if he weren't even there. "You can't trap me like this. You can't humiliate me in public. I needed space. I was figuring things out." "In the honeymoon suite we booked together?" I asked. Her voice rose. "You're controlling. You always wanted perfection. This is your way of punishing me for finally doing something for myself." "That's what this is?" I asked. "Self-care?" "You're vindictive," she hissed. "Showing up here, recording things. This is sick, Noah." I didn't raise my voice, didn't insult her, didn't even blink. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity. Behind her, I noticed resort staff stealing glances. A nearby couple had gone still, drinks untouched. The balance had shifted. She no longer held the story, and she could feel it slipping away. "You think this is some kind of win?" she asked, her words like a blade. "Do you want me to beg? Apologize in front of everyone?" I gave her nothing, just one calm line. "Number, I want you to hear yourself." And for the first time, she seemed to. She blinked, realizing how loud she'd been, how the man beside her had edged back, how her robe, her sandals, her carefully woven narrative, none of it could shield her now. I picked up my bag, nodded toward the front desk, and started to walk away. She didn't follow, didn't call after me. Just stood there on the pool deck, surrounded by a silence that pressed down like water. For the first time since this began, I felt peace. I should have kept going, but she wasn't finished. The moment I stepped off the deck, she lunged, gripping my arm with a force that turned heads. Her hold was desperate, like someone clutching the last frayed rope in a storm. "You don't get to walk away like this," she hissed, yanking me toward a cluster of palms near the outdoor showers. "You don't get to twist this and make me the villain." I let her drag me, saying nothing. "You're ruining my special day," she spat, eyes wild. "Do you even hear yourself? Flying here, hiding in corners like some pathetic ex." "I'm your fiancé," I said evenly. That stopped her, not with guilt, but with panic. The version of reality she'd built was crumbling, and I wasn't helping her hold it together. "I didn't plan any of this," she blurted. "It just happened. You've been on edge for months, and I didn't feel like myself with you anymore." "That's your story?" I asked. "You didn't feel like yourself, so you decided to wear someone else's life instead?" Her nostrils flared. "Stop painting me as heartless. Then stop acting like you had no other choice." That's when he appeared again, the man, now wearing a shirt, jogging toward us with cautious eyes. "Is everything okay?" he asked her, ignoring me entirely. She turned to him as if he were an anchor in a storm. "No, it's not okay. He's trying to ruin me." I gave a short, humorless laugh. "You handled that just fine on your own." "Don't," she warned. "Don't act like you're innocent here." "Innocent?" I said. "You're sleeping with someone who doesn't even know your real name." A flush crept up his neck, but he tried to smooth it over. "Look, maybe this isn't the place." "She told you she was single, didn't she?" I cut in. He hesitated. "Yeah, she said she'd just gotten out of something serious." "Did she also tell you we have a wedding date, that our families have already paid deposits, that there are 3 suits hanging in my closet because I couldn't decide which one to wear when I said I do?" That shut them both down. Grace looked unsteady, pale. He stepped back, glancing between us. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, man." I gave a single, measured nod. "This isn't on you." Then my attention shifted to Grace. Really shifted. I studied her face as her lips parted and closed again, like she was rehearsing an excuse she couldn't quite deliver. But it wasn't me she was trying to save. She was working to shield her own reflection from the cracks. "You know what cuts the deepest?" My voice was low, steady. "Not the cheating, not the lies. It's that you still think this is all centered on you." Her shoulders folded inward just slightly. "I was scared," she whispered. "Yeah," I replied. "So was I. But I didn't run. And I sure as hell didn't swap you out before we even reached the altar." She stayed mute. The man beside her muttered something under his breath and drifted away with an awkward shuffle. She didn't go after him. I turned toward the path ahead. The sunlight had risen high enough to carve the ground into strips of brightness and shadow. I didn't look over my shoulder. That chapter was closed. She'd lost her hold on the story, and I had reclaimed mine. Denver felt sharper when I landed. It wasn't the air. The forecast promised warmth and a cloudless sky. But something in the city's mood seemed dulled, as if it understood a fault line had shifted in my life while I was gone. I dropped my duffel bag just inside the apartment door and didn't bother unpacking. A faint mix of dust and stale coffee hung in the air. On the bookshelf, the framed photos hadn't moved. One was of Grace and me at a spring wedding in Boulder, her champagne glass raised, wearing that smile that suggested the universe bent to her will. I left it there, for the moment. I filled a glass with water in the kitchen and leaned against the counter. No calls, no texts. I wasn't expecting any. If anything, the silence only cemented what I'd already realized. She had stepped out of the relationship long before I boarded that plane. I was just the last to notice. The next morning, I went to her parents' house. They had been waiting for both of us. I didn't waste words. Janine opened the door in a soft blue cardigan, her expression lighting up in recognition, then dimming as she took in the fact I was alone. In the kitchen, Mitch sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, the Sunday crossword spread before him. "Where's Gracie?" Janine asked. "She's not coming," I said flatly. "And there's something you need to know." I gave them the condensed version. The trip to Tulum, the man at the pool, her reaction when she saw me. I left out the uglier edges. By the time I finished, Janine had lowered herself into the chair beside Mitch, her eyes wide, disbelief etched deep. Mitch rubbed at his temple slowly, as though the bad news was seeping in by degrees. "She told us she needed a break before the wedding," he said, his voice low. Said she was going with her college roommates. She booked the honeymoon package, I told him. Didn't even bother changing the name. A heavy silence settled. Janine scrolled through her phone, worry flaring. She's not answering. I haven't heard from her in 2 days. I rose. I'm not here to make you choose sides. I just wanted you to hear it from me. Mitch stood as well. A man of few words, he took my hand in both of his and gripped hard. You didn't deserve that, son. It struck deeper than I'd expected. That night, I finally cleared the photos from the shelf. One by one, they slid forward and dropped softly onto the carpet. The last one was of us under Christmas lights, caught mid-laugh over something I can't remember. I lingered with that frame in my hands. She had been my future until she wasn't. Then the messages began trickling in. Friends started forwarding screenshots, location tags, group chats, her own bridesmaids piecing things together. One picture stood out. Grace at a rooftop bar 2 nights before Tulum, arm looped around the same man from the resort. He'd been tagged, the poster oblivious to the storm building in the background. The comments were ruthless. Wasn't this her bachelorette weekend? Where's Noah? Is she still engaged? The threads she'd been spinning were unraveling fast. And this time, she couldn't tie them back together. The brunch had been on the calendar for weeks, back when everything still looked flawless. It was supposed to be our pre-wedding send-off, a warm gathering before the chaos. Grace had picked the rooftop cafe herself, mismatched chairs, bottomless mimosas, menus you had to squint at. Even after everything, I went. Alone. I didn't cancel, didn't explain, just let the day happen, as though the universe had decided I needed to sit this test in silence. When I arrived, the hostess smiled professionally. Table for Hensley, I said, under Noah. She glanced at her tablet and nodded. Right this way. The cafe was half full, sunlight spilling through sheer curtains, soft jazz drifting from somewhere unseen. Faces turned as I entered, her friends, my cousins, co-workers. They registered my presence. Then they registered my solitude. The air changed, smiles tightened, whispers rippled. I made my way to the head of the table, not for drama, but because it had to be me who spoke first. If I didn't, someone else would try and they'd only have fragments. I cleared my throat. No script, no microphone. Just me in a button-down and worn dress shoes, standing in the rubble of a life I'd nearly walked into. Thanks for coming, I began, my voice even. This brunch was meant to kick off our wedding week, a celebration before the big day. Eyes darted, the tension deepened. But, I went on, as some of you already know, and the rest will now, there's not going to be a wedding. A few eyebrows rose. Amanda, her closest friend, lowered her glass. My Aunt Linda tipped her head, curious. There's no gentle way to put it, so I'll be direct. Grace made another choice. I let the words settle before continuing. I went to Tulum last week. She was supposed to be there with her college friends. She wasn't. She was with someone else. Someone who had no idea she was engaged. Someone she lied to about everything, right down to her name. Murmurs spread. Amanda's eyes fell to her phone, thumbs moving fast. She told me I was imagining things, said I should relax, so I did something she didn't expect. I trusted my instincts. I followed them, and I saw enough to know this wasn't just nerves. I drew a slow breath. I'm not angry anymore. What I feel now is relief. Another pause, this one deliberate. Relief because I nearly married someone who could look every one of you in the eye while lying without blinking. Relief because I would have given her everything, and she would have taken it as if it were owed to her. This time, they weren't looking at me with pity. Something else flickered there. Maybe respect, maybe something sharper. I know this is uncomfortable, I said with a small nod. But I couldn't leave you wondering. I couldn't sit here pretending, knowing the truth. It started with the sound of 2 palms meeting, one person clapping alone. Then another joined, and soon the whole table was in quiet unison. It wasn't thunderous applause, just a measured, sincere beat. A small smile crept over my face. Not because I craved recognition, but because I felt lighter, as if my heart had been carrying a truth that had finally reached its destination. As I stepped away from the head seat, Amanda's hand caught my sleeve. She played all of us, didn't she? I met her eyes. She played herself first. 3 days passed before she reached out, not with her voice or a knock at my door, but a text. Grace, so this is how you want them to find out? I stared at those words longer than necessary, not for lack of a reply, but because I'd never seen an admission of guilt twisted so neatly into an accusation. No apology, no ownership, only a shield of pride. A few months ago, I might have answered. I might have offered something to soften the edges, to keep the peace, maybe even to leave the door open for forgiveness. But I wasn't that man anymore. I let the message sit unread. That evening, I scrolled through my tagged photos. Brunch snapshots had begun surfacing, sunlight pouring over stacks of pancakes, coffee curling steam into the air, hair swept by the breeze. The captions told their own story. Brunch with a twist. Sometimes the end is the start in disguise. Proud of this man. Real strength is quiet. It felt like watching a stage set crumble piece by piece. Grace's carefully maintained image collapsing in the open. Her charm, her curated perfection, her talent for compartmentalizing. It had all been delicate, and she'd been the last one holding the mask in place. Masks always slip when no one's willing to help you keep them on. The news traveled slowly. Some mutual friends sent cautious messages, surprise from some, awkwardness from others, and a few quiet acknowledgments that they'd noticed the cracks long ago but hadn't dared to say so. Then came the silence. The kind that cleans. The kind born from people choosing to step away. There was no explosion, no angry confrontation, just absence. Even her maid of honor, Alina, posted a cryptic sentence. Sometimes loyalty means leaving quietly. I didn't grin at it. I just felt done. The heaviness had turned into something cleaner, not rage, but understanding. I wasn't the man who'd once stood at a jeweler's counter for a ring or orchestrated her elaborate surprise birthday party. I wasn't the man she thought would wait while she rewrote the ending in her favor. I was someone different. Someone who'd endured the storm and come out not hardened, but refined. 2 days later, I drove out to Golden and hiked a trail Grace always dismissed as too dusty, too buggy. I had loved it from the start. At the summit, the foothills unfurled before me, steeped in early autumn gold. My breathing was steady, my pulse unhurried. I took a photo and wrote, "Healing doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it's just the end of pretending. No tags, no names, just truth." Within an hour, it became my most liked post in a year. But I hadn't written it for an audience, or for her. It was mine. Every word was mine. Weeks slipped by. The chaos dissolved into quiet, as real endings do, not in a bang, but in a soft, final stillness, when there's nothing left to defend. Grace disappeared from my life in fragments. Mutual friends stopped mentioning her. The wedding planner refunded our last deposit, a short, awkward email. The venue deleted our names from its calendar. The registry vanished into the void. My apartment lost her traces. The spot on the couch she claimed, the mirror she favored, the drawer of untouched skincare products. Last week I blocked her, not from spite, but from self-preservation. Sometimes healing isn't a grand gesture. It's a small choice that rescues you, inch by inch. Then the unexpected. Travis called. "Let's go somewhere," he said, "not to escape. To celebrate we made it through." I laughed it off at first. But a few days later we booked the same resort in Tulum. This time we weren't revisiting the past. We were reclaiming it. Liam came too, an old friend from college who'd quietly checked in through the worst of it. People who didn't need to fill the silence to prove they cared. Walking into the lobby, I braced for memories to weigh me down. They didn't. Everything felt lighter, as though I'd unknowingly dropped a burden miles back. We spent days by the pool with beers, wandered into town for tacos, slept late, laughed until it hurt. I took pictures, Sunsets, inside jokes, peace. None of betrayal. On the final night, we sat at the infinity pool, the same one where I'd once clung to my phone, recording a betrayal hidden behind laughter. But now, I didn't need proof. I already had my closure. The sky shifted, orange melting into lavender, lavender into night. I took one last picture, just the three of us. No silk robes, no lies, no captions dripping with pain. Truth has its own kind of sunset, and that one was ours.